Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Bob Urichuk joining us. Bob, welcome.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's great to be here.
So, Bob, for those who don't know you, aren't familiar with your work, just take a moment and share with us what you do.
Well, that's a good question. Basically, I am positioned myself about 20 years ago as an international professional speaker, trainer, author. And I've been recognized with many rewards. I guess one of my largest claims to fame is I've remained in the top 10 sales gurus and global sales gurus. They put out a list every year of the top 30, and I've managed to maintain top 10 status. And sales is really my area of expertise. So what I do a lot is I help consultants and salespeople and business owners, and I teach them how to engage buyers to buy. In other words, I teach the opposite of selling, and I consult in a way that allows people to engage buyers to buy as opposed to selling them or convincing them, as it's traditionally known.
Very interesting. So we're going to dig a lot deeper into that. Before we do, you mentioned this kind of ranking that is something that you look at. Tell me more about that. I'm not very familiar with that. What is that ranking all about, and how have you been able to maintain it over so many years?
Well, I started 20 years ago, and I guess about 10 years, no, maybe it was 2008. I got an email from a friend of mine in Bali. Hey, Bob, congratulations. I go, what's happening here? And he says, check this out. And I checked it out, and I think I was ranked number 6 or 7 at that time. And I believe the site is salesgurus.net. There's leadershipguru.net. I think it's Global Gurus is what it's referred to. And they have people identified in leadership, customer service, sales, this sort of thing.
Do you have any idea how you got onto that?
Well, I, for the past 20 years, have used Singapore and Dubai as my hubs. And I have basically consulted or worked with companies in about 50 different countries around the world over the last 20 years. So I became quite well known. I mean, I've even spoken to audiences as large as 10,000 people in Singapore and Kuala Lumpur. So I think it's just that word of mouth. And then I also developed the Velocity selling system, which is a non-traditional approach to selling. And I think that got me more credibility than my name did, because I really think it's a system that got me there. It's not me. I'm just a guy that enjoys life fully and has a lot of fun doing it.
So talk to me a little bit more about these hubs, because I think that, that's interesting and a little bit different from the conventional consultant or trainer or speaker who has a base, like one base, and then just travels around. When you said that you set up these hubs, tell me a little bit more of like, what does that actually look like, or what did it look like, and why did you?
Well, I was in the corporate world. I had a business failure at age 30, lost everything, got into the corporate world, got myself back on my feet after 15 years and decided this wasn't my cup of tea. And I decided to become a professional speaker, trainer, author. And international was a big part of it. So I was speaking to someone, and he said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, well, have you got a globe? He pulled out a globe, and I put my finger on Ottawa, Canada, and then I put it on the other side of the globe, and it touched Singapore. So I used points to fly to Singapore, but before leaving, what I did is I got on the internet, found the 10 best hotels, and I offered them 8 hours of sales training in exchange for a suite for 2 weeks. I did only 10. Out of the 10, 2 replied. I took up the first offer, flew to Singapore, spent 2 weeks there, trained their staff at night, networked during the day, picked up a first client, and then a second client. And then I ended up going to Singapore as much as 8 to 10 times a year. After a year or two, I was invited to speak in Pakistan. So I said, Pakistan, I wonder how close that is to Dubai. And then I looked on that, I applied the same strategy, and I started to work in Dubai. And in Dubai, I actually found, let's call him an agent for lack of a better word, who represented me and lined me up with contracts. So I would end up going to both Singapore and Dubai anywhere from 8 to 10 times a year for a period of about 15 years.
That's just fascinating. So the client that you first landed in Singapore, was that your first client in this business, or had you landed clients previously to that after leaving the corporate world?
No, this all happened within, I was going to say, 30 to 45 days of me leaving my corporate job, but I already had a couple of clients locally.
And how did you get those first few clients? Like even the first client, do you remember, so you left your corporate job, and then how did you go about finding that first client?
Well, going to networking events and basically I would think what I find as one of my best marketing tools is speaking.
Mm.
It's the old story in sales or even in consulting, one-on-one, like you and I, Michael, we can have a conversation one-on-one. And at the end of that, you're either going to say yes or no, or as a salesperson, I'm going to chase you forever. What I've learned is, and I use this a lot, I call it ROTI, ROTI. Now, let me ask you a question. Which is more important, money or time?
Time.
Exactly. Most people look for ROI. I look for ROTI, return on time invested. So if I'm going to spend a half an hour, and where am I going to get the best ROTI? One-on-one or one-on-100? Now, if I speak to 100 people, there's going to be, I'm going to say 15 to 20% that may want to do business with me, and they'll chase me. And this is one of the things consultants need to learn is how to develop their word of mouth and how to use pull strategies as opposed to push strategies to get them more business.
Love it. So you were in the corporate world. You obviously had experience in sales, right? And that's kind of why you decided to get into sales as a consultant and speaker. Is that correct?
Yes, it was actually, I started out more in the motivational side, but sales was always part of my past. And it's something I love because I do honestly believe that without a sale, nothing happens. Organizations wouldn't exist. Nobody would have a job. It all starts with making a sale.
So how did that transition happen? So you left the corporate world. You started off speaking more on motivation. And then from there, it sounds like you really transitioned more to sales. Like, why did that transition happen and how did it happen? Because I'm very interested in you kind of narrowing in on a specialization.
Well, let's go back a few years. When I was 30 years old, I had a business failure and I had to start over again. So I got a job. When I started the job, I asked myself, why am I here? And this is something I ask people all over the world now is why do you go to work? And you get answers, pay the bills, money, etc. And that wasn't the reason I was going to work. I said, you know what? I got 15 years here to clean up this debt and get back on my feet again. So let's pretend it's 15 years from now. What do you want to be? You could stay here, get, in the corporate world and leave with an index pension, or what else would you want? And I said, you know what? I've always wanted to be a speaker, trainer, author. Okay, so why don't we work the both angles? Let's use this corporate job as an opportunity to learn as much as I can about communication skills, about marketing, about sales, and all the rest of it. So during that 15-year period, I learned a ton of information. I created my own career path. And by 45, it gave me the confidence, yes, I am going in this route. There was even one time I tried to get fired because I heard it was a better buyout. But guess what happened? They ended up moving me out of the mainstream into what they call it, the learning center. Like they had a learning center. They put me through an adult learning course and gave me all the training. And I would go out and get certified on courses, come back. I would train 90 trainers who would train 55,000 employees across the country.
Right.
So when I got to that point, I had the confidence level that I could do this, and I knew I could. And one of the other things I wanted to get away from was I was seeing more and more 1, 2 day, 3 day sales classes, which to me don't work, and you lose everything within the first 30 days. You forget it. Unless it's continuous learning and reinforced, you'll lose it. So my whole objective was to get into continuous learning and continuous consulting. Once you get a client, how can you keep that client for a longer term and maintain and increase their revenues?
Got it. So this is really interesting. And I want to back up a moment here to explore the story a bit more because I am fascinated by your approach to entering into new markets. Some of our listeners may know that I built a business in Japan many years ago and spent 7 years there. So for me, international markets, traveling with my family is something that I do a lot. But I'm fascinated that you decided, okay, I'm going to go to Singapore, and that you even thought to reach out to hotels to say, hey, I'm going to be there. I'll exchange a suite at your hotel for some sales training. Like, where did that even come from? How did you even think of doing that?
Well, I've always had this mentality of creating win-wins, and not everybody has a budget. So how can you create a win and give them a win without money changing hands? A similar story, Michael. I'm in the beaches in Malaysia and I see all these Sea-Doos running around, everyone having fun. I say to the guy next to me, when I get back to Canada, I'm going to look up who's responsible for Bombardier sales, BRP, the Can-Am products. Well, geez, it took me about 2 years to find the right person. And then he finally met with me after an hour of discussion. He says, Bob, every one of our dealers across Canada and United States needs sales training, but we don't have a budget. And I said, well, Claude, did I talk to you about money? He says, no, but you're going to want something. I said, well, you got toys. He jumped out of his seat and he says, what do you want? And we ended up doing a little trade where I was going to do 5 keynotes in exchange for a $25,000 jet boat.
There we go.
And then we ended up changing it to an all-terrain vehicle instead of a jet boat. Listen, I've gotten watches from Rolex. I've worked with Bulgari. You just got to find a way. You got to be creative. And when you're a sole entrepreneur and you know what you can do and what you can't do, you kind of like open up. I've had many opportunities that have come my way because I was a little more flexible and it wasn't always about the money.
What I really take from this, Bob, more than even flexibility, is the importance of asking for something, right? Of putting it out there. I think so many consultants know, as an example, that they should earn higher fees, or that they need to do more prospecting, or they need to create more content. There's some action that they deep down inside know they need to take, but they hold off taking it because of fear of rejection or fear of the unknown or something else going on in their mind. And I think your example here is just such a great one of doing something that most people
wouldn't even think of.
Yeah, wouldn't even think of. And then even if they thought of it, they would go, oh, no, that might come across as being weird, or how are they going to respond to it? Like looking at all these reasons why it wouldn't work, but you're a clear example of it did work, and it worked in the way that you wanted it to.
Michael, you got it. Let me share something with you about asking. ASK is an acronym, and you know the answer to this. A stands for ask, and you will receive. S stands for seek, and you will find. K stands for knock, and the door will be open. When was the last time you sat down with the most important person in the world, yourself, and looked in the mirror and asked yourself, what do you want out of life? What do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? Once you know it, then you could go knocking. And the funny thing is, in the knocking, the doors of opportunity, or seeking, you can go seeking. And it's in the seeking that the doors of opportunity come right in front of us. Mm-hmm. But if you don't know what you're looking for, you're not seeking. But once you're seeking and you know what you're looking for, the doors come forward, and then all you got to do is ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. And this is the foundation to our whole sales system that puts the consultant, the salesperson, the business owner in control. It's all about asking questions. And if you don't ask, you don't get. If I don't ask, I'm losing face. I get nothing. If I ask, I got a 50-50 chance of getting a positive response. Do I not?
Definitely.
So am I not better off asking than not asking? What have you got to lose? Nothing.
Bob, you mentioned how important speaking has been for your business, and especially in the early days to get things started. How about these days? What's working best for you to get in front of ideal clients and set up conversations with them?
Well, I'm more in a retirement state these days, and I do still some consulting with a select few clients. I'm not actively looking for business. But what I find is whenever you get in front of a group of people and you give them value, you educate them, give them value, people will come looking for you by name. And this is part of what we call a personal marketing plan. Every consultant out there has to put together what I call a personal marketing plan. How do you position yourself in your market as an expert so people come looking for you by name? Now, you could write books. You could write blogs. You can go out and speak. By speaking, sharing your message. I mean, Michael, you know a lot about consulting. If you were to take a half hour and just, unload and help people like you're doing in your podcast, you're going to get people calling on you because, hey, I like this guy. He's given us something of value. And that's what people are looking for today is value. Now, value often comes in the form of a surprise. And I am full of surprises. I can never forget when I was speaking in Singapore, sharing the stage at that time with Tony Robbins' wife and Robert Kiyosaki, 10,000 people in the audience. And what do? Everybody here today is entitled to free email coaching, guaranteed 24-hour reply. Now, what does something like that do? That's unexpected, is it not?
Yeah, it sounds like a headache to me.
Oh, it does, but here's the thing. Years ago, I did research on a guarantee when I was in the corporate world. Mm-hmm. And what I found is the research showed that less than 1% of failures will actually make a claim. What I found with free email coaching was the same thing. Right. Less than 1% of that audience actually took advantage of it. However, I stuck to my word and I gave them 24-hour replies.
What did that do for your business?
Well, it created relationships, people talking about it, and I ended up getting more referrals. I'm a very passionate person when it comes to my areas of expertise, and I love to share it. And I want people to live a full life and live their dreams out and use Roadie to their best advantage. I want them to take advantage of the limited time we have on this earth and make the best of it. And so a personal marketing plan is all about positioning yourself as an expert so that you don't have to go out there advertising and stuff. I look at inexpensive ways. How can one market themselves? How can they position themselves as an expert? What can you do? And then we have discussions around that. And a lot of times I didn't even think about it. I just did it because I don't think, I just do.
Yeah. Let me ask you and just jump in for a second, because you're talking about going out and speaking and creating content, writing articles or books or things of that nature. And a lot of people will be listening to that and saying, yeah, but that's hard work. That takes time, Bob. How do you respond to them? What do you say to those people?
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early-stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early-stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
There's 2 words that will give you 200% performance. Both words, when transcribed from letter to a numeric value, like A being letter 1, both these words give you 100%. You add them together and you apply the 2 of them together, you get 200% performance. Now, before I get that, let me ask you a question. Who is the most important person in the world?
Myself.
Thank you. Good answer. And that's what you have to do. So the first word is attitude. Attitude is under whose control?
For myself.
Exactly. It's 100% under your control.
Yeah. Well, when you just asked me this, I know it's kind of going off a little bit here from the usual, but when you asked me that question, who's the most important person in the world? I struggled with that for a moment because my gut reaction was really to say my wife, my daughter, my family.
You're not alone, Michael.
Right. But I recognized it's the lesson shares with clients often. It's like when you go onto an airplane, they tell you if the cabin pressure drops, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before putting it on others. And I always think, well, yeah, if I'm not at my best, if my mindset isn't in the right place, if I can't take care of myself and be happy, then how can I take care of anyone else? So that's where I went with it. But I just wanted to share because maybe others might be feeling the same way that I struggled with that for a moment.
Yeah, most people do. And they'll say their wife, their mother, their parents, all kinds of things. But the thing is this, if you can't take care of you, you can't help anybody else.
Right.
You can't give something to somebody else if you don't have it inside to give away. So the second word, and you could guess the word probably, it's a commitment to the most important person in the world. It means doing what you have to do, even when you don't want to do it. And that word is discipline. Now, let me ask you a question, Michael. What's the most productive time of your day?
Early in the morning, usually.
Okay. What would happen if you dedicated 1 hour of your most productive time to the most important person in the world every day? What do you think would happen?
I'm already doing it, so I know the results of it. Yep.
You've already witnessed the results. So this is part of my daily disciplines. I used to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, have a coffee. Then I realized I was a morning person. I got up at 6. 6 to 7, I would review my goals. I would visualize. I would do anything to help me get where I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
At 7:00, and this is an important part, any behavior that gets recognized and rewarded gets repeated. So at 7:00 in the morning, my reward would be my first cup of coffee. And as I drink that cup of coffee, I give thanks to the fact that I can have a cup of coffee while there's millions of people out there can't get a clean glass of water. And my day starts like that. I have daily disciplines like I reply to emails same day. I have so many of these disciplines built in. They become habits, but they become effective habits. And that's what we have to do is take the time to reflect on what are our ineffective habits and what are our effective habits and how can we reverse ineffective into effective.
Makes sense.
If you're a procrastinator, well, what can you do? Well, how about do it right now? Don't think about it. What's the worst thing that can happen? You fail. And if you fail, you learn. At age 22, I gave myself permission to have 10 learning opportunities a day. In other words, permission to go out and fail, because I know that you got to fail often to succeed once. But I accept it. When something goes wrong, I don't beat myself up for the failure. I look for the lesson learned. The minute I get the lesson learned, I tap myself on the back and say, good one, Bob. You failed, but you got a lesson out of it. Keep up the good work. And I'm building up my confidence, my courage, whereas most people are destroying their courage and their confidence.
Yeah, I agree 100%. This is something I talk about as well, Bob, in my book, The Elite Consulting Mind, where I think a lot of people in our society, we look at failure as a bad thing.
Yeah.
I instead suggest that we look at it as a learning experience. And if you think about it in terms of a learning experience, the more that you quote unquote fail, the more that you learn. And even if you're getting a negative response, meaning that what you're doing isn't working in terms of getting to where you want to go, you now are helping yourself because you're working through the process of elimination. So you learn something that doesn't work, which means that you're closer to figuring out what does work.
Exactly. So just keep plugging away is the key thing, and notice these things and don't let them take you down. Rejection is another thing. People fear of rejection. Come on, you're rejecting yourself. We have this thing called identity and role. We get caught up in our roles so much that we forget our identity. And then when you get rejected, are they rejecting your role or are they rejecting your identity? It's really your role. But we take role failure over to identity. We beat ourselves up. We lower our self-esteem, our self-confidence, and then we're not as productive as we could.
Tell me more about that. What are the distinctions and differences between identity and role?
Well, let's take a look at it. The way I usually put this across is I ask the question, who am I? Now, let's use an example. Michael, who are you? Now, is it fair to say, you will say, like many other people, we will include our role in that definition. Do we not?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would.
Yeah, so we have our role. So let's take a look at your role for a moment. On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you describe your performance? Keep the answer to yourself because then I don't want you to embarrass yourself.
Maybe I won't.
No, but I know you won't. I know that for a fact. But let's pretend you picked a 3. Now, 3 is pretty low on a scale of 0 to 10. You picked 3 because you're new at your job. You don't know it yet. Or you hate your job and you can't stand it. So you're a 3. If you perform like a 3, how does it make you feel about yourself, your personality, your identity? How does it make you feel?
Well, I'm sure anyone at that level would not be feeling very good about themselves.
No, they'll feel like a 3. But let's take someone who's been in a job for 15, 20 years, 30 years. They know it inside out. They rated themselves as a 9, not to be egotistical. They said 9. Well, that's pretty good. And they probably know their job well and they're recognized for it and everything else. How does it make them feel about their identity? 9 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they come into work the next day and we say, Michael, thank you for your 30 years of service. Due to downsizing, budget cuts, and all the rest of it, we no longer need you. Your role goes from a 9 to what?
Well, a lot lower.
0.
Mm-hmm.
And with the loss of your role, you lost your job, you lose your role, and it makes you feel like a 0. And you go as far as leaving your family, becoming an alcoholic, turning to drugs, or even committing suicide, like the movie Company Man. You see what happens? Now.
So really what you're saying is that the role is how most of us kind of see ourselves, but it's directly connected to our identity. And maybe one way to make this very relevant for consultants listening is in a sales conversation or a business situation, oftentimes people will cross over where they could be much more objective, just looking at something in terms of their role, but they take it more personally in terms of their identity. and then react maybe too quickly or in the wrong way because of that.
Yes. Now, but let me take you to the other side. What we just talked about is who am I? Now I want you to answer the question, who am I without roles? Because this puts you on the identity focus.
Right.
So take a look in the mirror. The most important person in the world. How do you rate what you see? If you rate yourself at 3, it's because you're living your life from the outside in as opposed to the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
You're low self-confidence, low self-esteem. You became a doctor because daddy wanted you to become a doctor and you hate being a doctor. Get the idea?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
However, let's say you're the kind of person like you and myself who take the time during the day to analyze ourselves from the inside out. We know what we want. We put a plan together. We take action. We don't wait for things to happen. We make things happen because we got a good, strong identity. And put me in any role. Put me in cleaning toilets. I will do a great job cleaning toilets. I'll also do a great job as an executive or as a team leader or as a salesperson. Put me in any role because here's the thing. I'm as a 9. So if you rate yourself as a 9, you're going to perform like a 9. If you rate yourself as a 3, you're going to perform as a 3. But here's the thing. When I lose my role, I don't go to 0. I stay as a 9 because I am me from the inside out.
I think that's a really great point. It reminds me of the book by Robin Sharma. Was it The Leader with No Title?
That's right. He's a good friend of mine too. And actually, I've got a quote sitting in front of my desk from Rob.
Nice. Beautiful. So let's go back a little bit to your business and shift away from mindset for a moment here. As you built your business, was it always speaking that worked best for you to get in front of ideal clients, or did you ever find another method that for you worked better?
Well, I think speaking was a big part of it. Having someone in Dubai to represent me was a nice aspect too. They got a commission on it. We call that, which it works well. But one of the things I think I need to point out is, and I think consultants do this a lot, is they work on a fee basis, and they're the first to reveal price. I teach salespeople to never be the first one to put price on the table. Always ask what their budget is. And a lot of times I set my fees at the beginning, but my clients have continuously upped my fees. And then once I get a client at a fee, I say, I'm sorry, I can't get lower because this last client paid this and I can't justify going at a lower price.
Sure.
But again, the clients can drive fees for you and they have a budget. And a lot of times we leave money on the table because we put our budget or our price on the table without asking them that.
Right. What's your feeling and view, Bob, on giving immense value for free to a potential client before you actually enter into a sales conversation, right? A lot of consultants, when they are entering into a sales conversation with a prospective client, or even before, they're hesitant to give a lot of materials or value, whatever it might be, for the fear of maybe giving too much. So what's your personal experience around that, and how do you counsel salespeople and others that you work with in this area?
Well, we have to understand how buyers buy. And step 2 in their system is they're looking for free consulting. They want to know everything you know without paying a price. And this is a standard thing. So what we need to do is learn how to be in control of the sales process. So how we do that is basically you establish the trust. Number 1, build the relationship, as we call it. And there's various techniques to do that. Step 2 is we set ground rules or set the parameters. For an example is, I would say something like, right now, Michael, how much time we got left in our interview? What is it you'd like to accomplish? And by the way, if I can't help you, you okay if I tell you no? And if I can, I could be yes. In other words, could we just be honest and work on yes, no answers? This simple technique alone, setting the ground rules, setting the parameters, shortens your sales cycle and gives you more control over the process.
Sure.
And then my job is not to be, we have a rule. We call it the 70-30 rule to distinguish it from the 80-20 rule. 70% of the time, what should you as a consultant be doing?
Asking questions.
Okay. We say 70% of the time you should be listening. 30% of the time, what should you be doing? Asking questions.
Got it.
If you add 70 and 30, you got 100%. There's no room for talking.
Yeah.
So, and this is the whole thing. And I ask this around the world, with professional salespeople everywhere. I put them into teams. Why do we ask questions? The team that comes up with the longest list of reasons why we ask questions, everyone on that team will win a prize. But I'm looking for one particular answer. What do you think that one answer is?
You tell me, Bob.
Well, we go through, they don't get it. Professional salespeople don't get it. So then I go and I play a card game and I get someone in the audience to guess a card that somebody else is calling. And basically it's this. When you're asking questions, you are in control. And when you take a look at a consultant-buyer relationship, the buyer is asking the consultant's questions and the consultant's answering them. The consultant thinks he's in control when in reality he is out of control.
Mm-hmm.
It is the business owner, the consultant, the salesperson that should be asking the questions. The person asking the questions is in control of the outcomes.
Let me bring you back then to the question I had for you here. Try and make it a little bit more specific for all of our listeners. I think people understand, although they don't always practice. I mean, something that I've talked about a lot before and other guests have as well, including yourself, Bob, like the importance of asking questions, right? That's really what makes a consultant a good consultant. Asking questions and listening a lot. So we've established that. But in terms of how much value you actually provide,
okay,
how much do you give away? If a buyer asks you, how would you handle this situation? Or
if I give something away, Michael, I give it away in a self-discovery process so that they own it. So asking questions is not just for information. Asking questions is to lead a conversation so that they talk about their pain. And the more pain they've got, the bigger the budget they're going to spend on it.
Good.
So we lead them towards an outcome. So it's just not asking questions for information. It's guiding you through the whole process to narrow it down so that in the end, the buyer buys. You don't sell them. In other words, I can ask you questions for self-discovery. Who's the most important person in the world? You discovered that for yourself. You're going to own that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I didn't tell you. I didn't tell you that. So I guide you through the process by asking questions. I don't close you, and that's a word I would never use in sales. I empower you to buy.
Bob, you and I are very aligned because this is exactly what I share with clients as well. This way of thinking, not thinking about in terms of closing, but helping people and empowering them, taking them through a process so they realize it themselves. I'm really glad that you made that distinction here for everyone listening because it is so, so important. Let's talk about your sales training platform. Why did you create that? Why not just stick to speaking and training and consulting? Why go ahead and develop this learning platform?
Well, years ago, I was in the corporate world and I got moved into sales training and I was given a year to find a sales training program. And I sat in on, I would say 40 to 50 of the world's best training programs only to see the same, excuse my language, the same crap time and time again. And then every once in a while, I'd see something different. So what I did is I started to create a best practice. And I created the best practice and we created the velocity selling system. Now, the velocity selling system covers all elements of success. It's as simple as A, B, C, D. It's about attitude towards yourself, attitude towards your organization, attitude towards the buyer. Then we look at behavior towards yourself, behavior towards the organization, behavior towards the buyer. Then we look at competencies, what you need to be competent at before you meet the client. And then we get into the sales system. And then the D is discipline, doing what you have to do even when you don't want to do it. So we got the complete framework. Now, what we did is because I found that it was getting ridiculously expensive. People would fly me to Kuwait, pay business class, put me up in 5-star hotel and pay me huge sums of money. And yet I found I was getting out of reach and losing what my main focus was in getting people in a more affordable, accessible training. So what I did is I put it all online. I spent 8 days in a studio in Las Vegas with Lightspeed virtual training, and we put the complete sales program on video in modules, and we sell it by the month, by the year. It's an annual program. It's continuous learning, and it helps everybody go through it. So if you want more information on that, it's in velocityselling.com. Otherwise, we have a lot of great resources at bobu.com that help people on asking questions. There's blogs there on every component of it.
Yeah, we'll have, just for everyone listening here, we'll have in the show notes, you can go to consultingsuccess.com, type in Bob Urichuk, and you will find all the links to what Bob has mentioned if you'd like to learn more about Bob. I was going to ask you here as another question just to kind of finish off, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? You've answered that already, right? They can go to bobu.com or to velocityselling.com. And again, we'll have all this in the show notes, everyone. Bob, I really want to thank you so much for coming on here and sharing with us today.
Well, Michael, I really appreciate you taking the time. And I believe the consulting industry is a fantastic opportunity. we often use the word mentoring, which includes consulting, coaching, and mentoring, of course, all in one. But the bottom line is this. There are a lot of people out there on their own, and it's a very lonely business. You need someone to talk to. And I found that even in my own business, as much as I had clients and friends around the world, I did not have someone to sit down and talk business with. And a lot of times I've made decisions on my own, and it's a tough thing. But people are there, like yourself, like myself, to help these people. And all they got to do is ask. On your behalf, Michael, because you're the one that introduced me to your listeners, and I'm willing to give back because I'm big on that. Retirement stage, but I am right at this point passing on so much to so many people so that they could develop success of their own and take this to another level.
Wonderful. Bob, thank you again so much for coming on and sharing a bit of your story here with us today.
Well, I thank you, Michael, and have yourself a great day.
You too.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.